Welcome to the 2026 commencement exercises of Georgetown University and the ceremony for our Walsh School of Foreign Service, the oldest and the very best school of international affairs in the United States.
The world can change overnight. And strangely enough, that may become your greatest advantage. Uncertainty keeps you curious. It forces you to ask better questions. It prevents the dangerous illusion that you already know everything.
Your future is wide open and not predestined. There are many possible paths ahead of you, and you have agency.
Because sometimes, the most rewarding choices aren't the ones that follow a plan or a path, but rather the ones that lead us towards questions we didn't even know we cared enough to wrestle with in the first place.
Each of us, in our own ways, does what Georgetown teaches us, to care for each other and our community.
I think many of us came to Georgetown hoping to make the world a little bit better.
It can be a tempting thought to drift away from our passions, to stick to easier paths, to let our doubts and our insecurities and our fears lead us to the safer choice.
Will you enter the halls of power and reinforce what power already upholds? Or will you bring up inconvenient facts and the need to place human consequences of war at the center of your decisions? Such horrors can harden our hearts and make us cynical. But cynicism is a luxury that we cannot afford.
Cynicism is surrender dressed up as sophistication. And you do not have the luxury of surrender. None of us do. Not now, not ever.
You give us all hope that we can get to a world where cooperation transcends borders, where justice tempers power, where evidence guides policy, and where human dignity is universal.
The important thing is to keep human beings at the center of everything you do.
Let's not allow service to become foreign, but everyday and mundane.
The challenge of today requires you, each and every one of you, in whatever walk of life you choose.
Your spirit is stronger than ever. Your commitment to service, however you have chosen to exercise it, is unwavering.
Class of 2026, disturb the universe by believing complicated problems are still solvable, by demanding truth as everyone's bottom line, and by remembering that progress, however imperfect, has always belonged to the people willing to fight for it.